Hey everybody, this is Gregory from Dapp University. So today I've got another guest on the channel. I've got Bill Ottman here, the co-founder of Minds.com. So welcome to the channel, Bill.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Awesome, man. I'm so glad you can make it today. So really quickly, for those watching who may not be familiar with Minds, you want to kind of give us your elevator pitch for, what Minds is and what you're working on there?
Sure. So Minds is a open source social networking platform, sort of moving towards decentralization, I would say. We have a key focus on privacy, transparency, anti-censorship, but obviously only lawful content. We're basically trying to do everything the opposite that the major social networks are doing and embrace crypto. So we have a whole integrated crypto reward system where you actually earn tokens for your contributions, and then you can use them to boost your posts. One token redeems you 1,000 impressions extra on whatever content you post. You can wire it to other channels on a one-time or recurring basis in exchange for exclusive content. We host blogs and videos, and social networks are all becoming the same thing. Is sort of what's happening. They all have the expected amount of functionality, and we're sort of, driving towards there. I think doing a pretty good job. And yeah, I guess if that's an elevator pitch.
Yeah, no, that's great. So that's awesome. So maybe clarify for me a little bit. So it sounds like you've got some sort of crypto incentive structures going on the platform. Is that right?
Yeah, so we leverage Ethereum, and it's an ERC20 token. You can interact on-chain in a few different contexts. So when you boost a post, which is our promotion advertising tool, you can do that on-chain or off-chain, which we think is important because just of the learning curve. So we're trying to incentivize on-chain activity with, better, more perks to basically that advertisement. But we had a point system before we moved into crypto where it was on our own servers. We were just rewarding users with points for all different kinds of activities, and 1 point would get you 1 view on your content. We did that in direct response to all the algorithm manipulation on Facebook and whatnot, just because we knew that people wanted to get more exposure, and so it quickly became like a really popular feature. And then we saw all these advantages of moving to a crypto token system, just because it's more the whole supply is more transparent. You can just see what's going on. We didn't give any tokens to founders or anything. It's just like sort of everyone's on the same level in terms of earning. You can also buy them, but it's grounded in this 1 token to 1,000 impressions in terms of the use of it. So you can also wire between users on chain or off chain. You can, let's see, we're also considering doing some more stuff with on chain for verification purposes, identity stuff. So yeah, that's kind of where we've gotten started though.
Yeah, very cool. So it sounds like, this crypto token has a really, integral role in the product itself. That's very cool.
Yeah, I mean, why don't people deserve to get rewarded for their contributions? And why it's just so ridiculous how Facebook morphed the news feed into this thing that you don't even know what it is anymore. You don't know why you're seeing what you're seeing.
Right. Something that's very mysterious kind of behind the curtains that we have to sit here and try to figure out. And like you said, maybe try to manipulate.
But don't worry, global coin's coming to the rescue.
Very cool. So maybe clarify me for a little bit. So it sounds like there's kind of 2 sides of this crypto token. You've sort of got a pay to play way where you can boost your own content, but you can also be rewarded for content that you post sort of on the other side. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I could also send you an offer of like 100 tokens in order to share my post. So it's like a direct peer-to-peer advertising system.
Right.
As opposed to going, like, you can boost through us and we'll distribute it through people's news feeds. But this is honestly my favorite feature that I don't think people really use enough yet. But I think once we achieve more critical mass, it should see more adoption. But why brands should be there are already side economies that exist on major social networks of influencers paying each other
Right.
for access to each other's feeds. So why wouldn't you just automate that through the app on a smart contract? It's just, you can manage your offers so much more easily. You don't have to go through this whole email correspondence and contracts. It's just right there. You know who you want to advertise with, so send them an offer and they can accept or reject it.
Right. Yeah, very cool. So it's almost like a bounty in this case.
Yes, for sharing, for like access to each other's audiences. And there's so many different gamification upgrades that we're thinking about. So that's just a matter of time before it expands into the other areas.
Yeah, very cool. So like it's kind of three use cases here that we've kind of outlined. The sort of the pay to play, almost like you've reinvented the digital ads platform natively on your own tool. You've kind of reinvented the incentive structure for people to post content, and then you've also created a way to kind of about, I called it bounties. You kind of talked about it being a way to tap into maybe an influencer market in a programmatic or automated way.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, maybe I'll talk about that a little bit with the incentive structure. So it sounds like you've almost reinvented the incentive structure of the social media game in a way, because traditional social media, at least in my perspective, without cryptocurrency, already has an incentive structure, right, based on popularity, lots of other things, and that's essentially what the algorithms reward right now. And you kind of have to figure those things out. Is that right?
Yeah, I think though that we don't know exactly what the algorithms are doing. They're rewarding a certain type of user. It seems to be, it's not just like you're going to, if you have the best content, the algorithm's going to reward you. It's not egalitarian like
Sure.
that. It's definitely focused on, certainly less controversial content. So I think now in the new wave of like Web3 social networks, it's the network has to have a privacy focus. They have to be working on encryption and creating more of a peer-to-peer architecture where users are controlling more of their data and information, and just obviously total transparency. So if the code's not free and open source, then it's just not really in the conversation, to be honest, because
Right.
it's like then you're just subject to more secrecy, just like all the major networks now. It's not to say that there's no usefulness for secrecy in any sense, and there's sort of this paradox between privacy and transparency. So
Mm-hmm.
the network, like the user privacy is essential, but the network needs to be transparent to a certain degree. Otherwise, the users have to trust the network, which isn't what we should really have to do. So that's why trustlessness is key. And then, additionally, we're also like community owned sort of, because we did an equity crowdfunding round in 2017 where like over 1,000 users now that have stock, and it's the equity side is definitely totally, the token is just utility. There's not, there's nothing security about it. And you saw Kick is getting, do you see that news?
You want to catch us up on the news?
This social network, it was like a messaging app, Kick.
Mm-hmm.
They have Kin, which is crypto, but they didn't have a product when they launched the raise, and they sort of gave all these special perks to investors. And I mean, I don't know. I'm not taking. I understand why the SEC is doing what they're doing. I don't. Generally speaking, I think that the U.S. needs to be a lot more friendly to crypto-centric projects with good faith, that are acting in good faith. Clearly, there are scams that need to get enforced. But if you go through the Howey test and the Hinman test, which are these SEC tests that sort of quantify and qualify what a secure, what is and is not a security. Anyway, we were just super careful when we launched ours that we had a product on day one. You're not promising future value or returns to the users. And, because typically those are sort of the things that you want to be careful with when, people are when investments are being solicited towards you.
Right. Yeah, very cool. So tell me a little bit about, let's talk more about transparency. You mentioned having a lot of stuff that's open source that people can go look at this. Obviously I have a primarily technical audience who could make sense of, at least some of what's open source, even if it's not maybe in a technology they're familiar with. And, I've seen this, tension with a lot of other projects. If they have smart contracts or something like that, they'll make those open source. People can look at them. How much of a advantage do you think that's going to be for, people as we kind of bring on more casual users who may be less technical? Is it still a good gesture, even if they can't make sense of it? What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, I think that's exactly what it is. Most people have no idea what is going on there. But the fact that the peer review community can, and
Right.
that the people who are technical can, that's what, not everyone can be an expert. All of our stuff's at gitlab.com/minds. And our policies are there as well. We're running our policy evolution through Git, which is also really important, because Git, most people don't really realize is, yes, it's a sort of social coding mechanism. So, you can get different versions of code and branched out and merging back into itself. But you can also do that with text. So if you have a document, you could fork the document, you can make changes, you can then request a merge back into the main master branch. And so it's really a cool just collaboration tool in itself.
Right.
And so we're definitely encouraging that type of open governance as well. And we actually, one thing I'm pretty psyched about that we just released is a jury system on our moderation. So basically, for phase one, if we make a decision based on a report that someone thinks is wrong, they can appeal that, and then it goes to a flash jury of randomized active users to vote on it. And if it reaches the 75% consensus that we were wrong, then our decision gets overturned. And so that's really important, just, because you hear about all these people getting, from across the political spectrum, getting banned from Facebook and Twitter, and it's just a total mess. So, clearly something's not working. But later we'll probably move the reports to the initial decision point, so that we're actually taking ourselves out of that. Well, we can still be involved in the process, but actually as a juror, not as the main decision maker.
Sure, more of a seat at the table.
Yeah, seat at the table.
Awesome. Very cool. I like that. So I got two kind of other questions that have jumped out to me here. Briefly, when you're talking about, how your platform works and how you've integrated your token and all that kind of stuff, you're talking about moving towards more decentralization. You mentioned that at the beginning of our talk together. Tell me a little bit about just some of your architectural decisions. And this is from a high level. I don't necessarily want to get too far off in the weeds here on the details, but, a lot of people, at least what I see, when they're talking about, building a digital business, or a digital solution of some kind that, uses the blockchain, there's just sort of this spectrum of how much you want to use in your project, right? And, I've been talking about this a lot in some of my recent videos about how, there are going to be these niche use cases where, you have to decentralize all the things, and, people will only use it if, it has, the most possible degree of decentralization. And, there's some compromises that kind of back further and further off of that. Maybe can you tell me about some things that, we said, hey, this has to be decentralized. It's, a key part of our platform to do this with a blockchain, and this not so much. Maybe just talk about a couple of those.
Yeah, I like that. So essentially, you can never escape centralization fully. I don't think. Even the most decentralized projects are still, they still have a team often. Not all of them, but there are centralized teams working on it that are competing. So our stack is basically set up as, minds.com, we use servers. So we use Angular in the front, like object-oriented PHP in the back, Cassandra. Redis, Elasticsearch. We use Elasticsearch heavily in Kibana for a lot of our feeds and search and analytics. We use on mobile React Native, and then we actually have another app that we're working on which will integrate, but it's called Nomad, gitlab.com/mine/nomad. And there's a mobile version of Nomad, which is leveraging Node and React Native and IPFS, I think most likely. We've been also playing with DAT protocol, DAT, which is similar. But we've been having some issues with that, and so now we're sort of doing some R&D with IPFS. But the cool thing about IPFS is that it also integrates in the browser pretty well. So we can, we're figuring out how to architect it still, but we want a fully decentralized version, or at least, as much. We're still going to be a centralized coding team with open source developers contributing, but at least the user's information is sort of controlled by them. They're controlling the life of it. But the crazy thing about whether it's DAT or IPFS or BitTorrent or blockchains, that when you publish to those, it's immutable. Well, on blockchains, it's immutable, but then in more torrent style world it's, you can't just take it down. It's just seeded. And so there's tension there with privacy. And there's also tension there with there's potential problems that exist there. You even have difficulty deleting things from central servers or databases like Cassandra, or any database, because you leave artifacts when you delete things, and it becomes sort of this mess of covering up tombstones, and it's just never so simple. And so then with Ethereum, that's there, and we have a MetaMask integration, so you can handle your wallet in the browser. And then our mobile app has Ethereum wallet as well, and a Mines token wallet. But in the wallet address will likely be sort of the identity layer within Nomad, so that as opposed to your just username and email and password on the central Mines. So then there's also the potential of federated nodes, which, because anyone can take our code and launch their own app, social app, and change it and customize it. It's sort of similar to the projects Mastodon and Diaspora, which are decentralized social networks. So ActivityPub is the protocol that connects those. And so we've started working on ActivityPub. And we're also looking into things like staking mechanisms within nodes, so that developers can actually be earning tokens for developing and running instances, and that networks can potentially be earning for this is a little bit theoretical. We haven't confirmed this, but if there are highly active nodes with lots of users, that they could be earning. So whether you're a developer or like a company that wants to have a social network, you can be earning in both of those contexts, which is pretty cool. And then what else? I'll stop there.
Cool. No, that's awesome. Yeah, I really appreciate that perspective, and I hope people listening get a lot of value out of that, because, like I said earlier, there seems to be this tension that people are trying to resolve, at least when they're first getting started, and they probably never completely resolve it, about, what do we use the blockchain for? What do we, how much decentralization do we need? So I think that's a really great perspective. Yeah, thanks for that.
Yeah, it's hyperbolic when people go around saying, you can do everything on, this blockchain, and that global communications is going to be solved with just a blockchain. It can be helped massively, but to ever say that, there's one tool in your tool belt doesn't really make sense. Right.
Yeah. Perfect. So I got one more question. And there may be a few questions in this, kind of an open-ended direction. So I'm curious about where you see maybe an inflection point or a tipping point with, adoption of, decentralized social networks or something like that. You're the one that knows the analytics and the data behind these movements better than probably anybody listening. So where do you see this headed? Do you see, a big giant like Facebook realizing that they have lost, significant market share of their users on their platform and are forced to either adapt in some way or respond to this in some way? Do you see this continuing to serve a niche use case? Do you, where do you think this is headed, and what could be factors that influence people to make the jump?
For sure. I mean, we've sort of been through a couple different waves of decentralization and centralization. Even if you look back at like email, like the original email, that was mostly decentralized because people were running their own email servers. And then even something, Napster was a proprietary software service, so I can't give it that much credit, but it was an explosive global decentralization movement. And BitTorrent and all the other, torrent apps were a big leap forward for that technology, which is still super useful. And that's what, similar to what a lot of those projects I mentioned before are doing and sort of evolving to the next level. So we already know that that dApps can hit critical masses. They have in the past. Mm-hmm. Like Napster is a good example. So there's nothing saying that couldn't be, a social network or a major, consumer app couldn't do that, because we're already starting to. Sure. So, but to me, what matters is the integrity of the individual project. Just because a project is decentralized doesn't that's only half the distance.
That's right.
You have to have free software, and otherwise it's just in vain. And, maybe it can still have some results, but when you think about Facebook and what they're going to do with all this, rhetoric about privacy and crypto that they keep coming out with, it's likely going to be in vain, because they're just manipulating the market to sort of think that they're on board with this, but they're probably not going to share most of what they develop. They might open source a little part of it, but unless Facebook or Google or any of them open source their whole app, they're not there. Mm-hmm. They're not going to be able to compete. Well, but the reason that they're sort of in between two worlds right now, they probably are aware of this, but the amount of bureaucracy you'd have to go through to open source all the code to a major public company would not be an easy thing to do. You would just too many legal loopholes. It's also possible that they're using technologies which are not open source themselves, so they wouldn't even be able to if they wanted to. Mm-hmm. It's like that. So when I talk to people who are launching apps or starting businesses, it's like, you only use tools that you control. Don't get dependent on something that you don't control, because they can pull the rug out from under you or be spying or exploiting your information anytime. So and Facebook is a perfect example of this. The whole media industry basically started relying on Facebook for social traffic, and then Facebook changed the algorithm. Half the companies went out of business. They don't care. YouTube doesn't care when they demonetize. So, it's not to say never use those platforms, but you just don't, having your business rely on something that you can't control is not a good idea. Right.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, thanks so much for all that perspective. I think that, is going to be very valuable to people. A lot of people in my audience are trying to build, technical solutions. A lot of people watching are trying to start their own blockchain companies, are already running them. And so, just kind of having perspective from someone who's in the trenches, solving these problems.
Yeah, awesome. Absolutely. If you're a developer out there listening, definitely get in touch with us on GitLab. And people are building apps with our stack. So, if you're at all interested in building an app with like a social engine in it, definitely consider Minds. We've been working on it for like 10 years. So there's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like a lot of hard work has really come together and you guys have made something awesome. So, really quickly before we wrap up, if people want to join Minds and get started just to give it a test drive, how do they do that?
Yeah, just minds.com. You can get it on the app stores, or you can go to minds.com/mobile. Definitely hit me up. I'm at Ottman, Ottman on Minds, and hopefully we'll get you guys on there too.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. Well, very cool, Bill. Before we wrap up, is there anything else that you would like for the people watching to know?
I would just say extract the proprietary software from your machines while you still can.
I like it. Yeah, very cool.
It's hard,
awesome. Well, thanks again, Bill.
One day at a time.
Really enjoyed having you on the channel today. Everybody, go check out Minds with the links. I'll put those down in the description below. Again, thanks, Bill. And until next time, thanks for watching Dapp University.